I know you've been looking forward to this. The 5 things we need to do to make sure that we have decent financial regulation in the country so we don't have another economic collapse. Number 1, this is very important. We have a structural problem literally in capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I like capitalism. I want it to work. I think it's suited towards human nature, but it has to be checked. Humans are naturally greedy. That has an upside, that has a downside. We have to be able to regulate things smartly so that we can control that greed. In a controlled way, as Gordon Gekko says, it could be a good thing. Uncontrolled, it's a disastrous thing. So I mentioned that as part of point number 1, because the corporations today, because of how they're structured in the stock market, are not run by the shareholders, the people who own them. They're run by the executives. Now you can say, well, obviously you need executives. The owners can't come in and run it. But the problem is that the executives appoint the board, and the board appoints the executives. So it's a circle, and the owners can't break through that circle. The board, the executives will say, all right, here's my list of people on the board. Now, if anybody votes yes, they're in. Okay, it's a simplistic explanation, but roughly it. There is a bill right now in the House that says no, the shareholders get a much bigger say on who's on the board, so they have a much bigger say in who runs their own companies. To which I say, of course, of course. If you don't have the owners who have the money at stake running the company, the executives will have all the incentive in the world to take the money for themselves, to take it out in compensation, salary, bonuses, etc. And then, because if the company collapses afterwards, and to take greater risk, because if the company collapses afterwards, it's not their money. So rule number 1, give the actual shareholders, the owners of the companies, more power over who runs them. So sensible, you almost can't argue against it. So of course the Republicans are, the corporate Democrats are, and of course the executives are, because they're funneling the lobbyist money to those politicians. Point number 2, limit credit default swaps. There's a real reason to have derivatives. There's a real reason to hedge for, if you have corn or you got oil or et cetera, commodities that you have. And that's why derivatives came up in the first place. But we do not have to allow bets on top of those derivatives, what they call naked credit default swaps, where it's just simply gambling. That is part and parcel of what brought down the economy. Ban them. Okay, we're nowhere near it. Right now, the Democrats are saying, can we please at least list some of those on an exchange? And there's gigantic loopholes. No, you can't list the foreign ones. No, you can't list ones from certain companies, which will then soon become all of the companies, etc. So that's point number 2. You have to limit some of those credit default swaps that are just gambling. Point number 3 is you have to limit leverage. Okay, things are leveraged out of control. In 2004, the SEC did a unanimous ruling while no one was paying any attention. They lifted the leverage from about 12 to 1. So if you had $1, you can make about $12 in bets. They lifted it and they said, you know what? The companies get to decide on their own whatever leverage they think makes sense. And of course, you'll be shocked to find out that the companies decided that leveraging things to 33 to 1, as Bear Stearns did, 64 to 1, as Citigroup did, 95 to 1, as Fannie Mae did, that they were all very sensible and proposed no risk as long as the executives kept making that bonus money that they made off that risk. So you have to bring leverage back down. You have to fix that rule. You have to bring it back down to hopefully 10 to 1. Okay, if you have $1, you can make $10 worth of bets. Plenty good enough. Point number 4. Right now, the credit rating agencies are paid by the people that they rate, the companies that they're rating. So, of course, they have all the incentive in the world to say, oh, no, those are great companies. I'll tell you what, AIG, AAA, they got a lot of money. Okay, AIG not pay me. Well, of course that system doesn't work. They should be paid by the investors, because the investors rely on the ratings agencies to tell them, hey, is this a reliable stock? Is this a reliable company? Is this a reliable insurance company? And they have the incentive to get it right if they're being paid by the investors. Point number 5 is, look, the mortgage meltdown is what triggered the collapse. It's not the main reason behind the collapse. The bets are, the derivatives are, but it triggered it. And the reason that they made all these terrible mortgages is because the minute they did the transaction, they would take the mortgage or a package of mortgages and sell them to someone else. So they made the money off the transaction, and they had no risk. So the idea is if you make a loan, you keep a loan. Now, that would be ideal, that you keep 100% of the loan. If you make it, then you have all the incentive to make a good loan rather than a crap loan, and that destroys the economy. That'll never fly. Right now, what Obama is saying is you have to keep 5% of the loan. That's not good enough. That's just the cost of doing business. They'll get beyond that in a second. My proposal, you have to keep 50% of the loan. I'm still going to let you play with 50%. Am I not merciful? But the other 50% you have to keep, so you have a very good incentive to make smart, stable loans that don't blow up the economy. Now, those are my 5 rules for fixing the economy so that we don't have another collapse and fixing the financial industry. The 6th one that I would add as a corollary is we could use a hell of a lot more transparency at the Fed. They're giving out trillions of dollars in money, and we don't know exactly where it's going because they won't tell us. They say it's secret. We can't have you be public. We can't have you be a regulator. We can't have you giving out over $2 trillion worth of money and not tell us where it's going. That's not how it's supposed to be in a democracy. Now, so we have these rules. Funny enough, I have a story related to that 6th rule, the corollary, if you will. It turns out the Fed last year made money. Okay, now this seems like really good news. It made a record amount of money, $45 billion. So you know how I tell you they lend out this several trillion dollars, $2.14 trillion to be exact, to the banks? Well, they get paid for that. And they get a little bit of money back, not much, but a little. But they give out so much that you can't help but make a lot of money from that, even if you get paid a minuscule amount. So they're going to return to the Treasury. And the money they get back, it's not run like a private corporation. They don't get bonuses, etc. The head of the Fed, Ben Bernanke, is capped. He makes under $200,000. There's no bonuses. So the money that they make goes straight back into the Treasury. The good news is this year, they put $45 billion back into the Treasury. Hey, that's pretty cool. The downside to that is, well, if you're making $45 billion, that means you got a lot of money out there, and a lot of that money is at risk. And if you could make the money, you could also lose the money. So this year we had a good year, and remember AIG had many, many good years because they were the guys that backed everybody up. So as long as the economy didn't collapse, they kept bringing in the money in fees. But when the economy collapsed, well, the bottom fell out and they didn't have enough money for it. Now, if the Fed is making the money now, it also means it's on the hook if things go wrong because they're actually buying the assets too now. That's part of the reason they're making a profit. But some of those assets they're buying are terrible. They're the toxic assets. So you heard it here first. Don't be too excited about that money they made and put back in the Treasury this year because it could blow up on us later.